Good morning, all. I am Neela, and I'm here to have your session today. And let us start our session with some meditation for about 10 minutes, and then I'd introduce myself, and then we can go into the topic. Let us all sit straight, clasp your hands, and then clasp your legs. Have your spine straight, and concentrate on the normal breath. Let us all continue to meditate and delve deep into our breath and our observation of the body. Do not open your eyes. I'm going to sing a song for you all. Please keep your eyes closed and continue to meditate. నారాయణాచ్యుతానంత గోవింద హరిసారముగనీకునే శరణంటిని నారాయణాచ్యుతానంత గోవింద హరి సారముగనీకునే శరణంటిని సారముగనీకునే శరణంటిని 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 చలువయును వేడియును నటల సంసారంబు తొలకు సుఖమొకవేళ దుఃఖమొకవేళ చలువయును వేడియును నటల సంసారంబు తొలకు సుఖమొకవేళ దుఃఖమొకవేళ ఫలములివేయి రెండు పాపములు పుణ్యములు పులుపు తీపును కలిపి భుజించినట్లు ఫలములివేయి రెండు పాపములు పుణ్యములు పులుపు దీపును కలిపి పూజించినట్లు నారాయణాచ్యుతానంత గోవింద హరి సారముగనీకునే శరణంటిని నారాయణాచ్యుతానంత గోవింద హరి సారముగనీకునే శరణంటిని 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 పగలు రాత్రుల రీతి బహుజన్మ మరణాలు తగుమేలు పొడచూపు తను తానే తొలగు పగలు రాత్రుల రీతి బహుజన్మ మరుణాలు తగుమేలు పొడచూపు తను తానే తొలగు నలయించునొకవేళ నగయించునొకవేళ ఒగరు కారపు విడెము ఉబ్బించినట్లు నగయించునొకవేళ నలగించునొకవేళ ఒగరు కారపు విడెము ఉబ్బించినట్లు నారాయణాచ్యుతానంత గోవింద హరి సారముగనీకునే శరణంటిని నారాయణాచ్యుతానంత గోవింద హరి సారముగనీకునే శరణంటిని 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 ఇహము పరములు వలెని ఎదిటి కల్లయు నిజము విహరించు భ్రాంతియును విభ్రాంతియును మతిని ఇహము పరముల వలెని ఎదిటి కల్లయు నిజము విహరించు భ్రాంతియును విభ్రాంతియును మతిని సహజ శ్రీ వెంకటేశ్వరు నన్ను కరుణింప బహువిధంబుల నన్ను పాలింత్వవే సహజ శ్రీ వెంకటేశ్వరు నన్ను కరుణింప బహువిధంబుల నన్ను పాలించవే నారాయణాచ్యుతానంత గోవింద హరి సారముగనీకునే శరణంటిని నారాయణాచ్యుతానంత గోవింద హరి సారముగనీకునే శరణంటిని 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 శరణంటిని. Let us continue with 2 more minutes of meditation. Slowly take your palms and keep them on your eyes. Observe the reaction between your palms and your eyes and observe yourself. And slowly open your eyes looking at your palms. Good morning once again. I am Neela. I'm here to take you through the session today. I'd like to introduce myself for about 5 minutes and then we can switch on to the topic. I started meditating in the year 2008. Since I was little, I was very much interested in reading books. I was introduced to books at a very young age, when I was 5 years old. Seeing my interest, my mom and my mother encouraged me to visit the library and read a lot of books, various types of books. And it was around that age when my grandmother used to tell me stories about our itihasas and Puranas. And I used to wonder why. I used to be very enthralled by the topic, but I wondered why the current society or the current world is not in any way similar to what happened back then in Treta Yuga or Dwapara or Satya Yugas and so on. I used to question the elders as to why we don't have all the powers, or the way they used to communicate or meditate, or the way they had such exemplary powers that they used to achieve the impossible that would seem in the present day. And they used to say that because this is Kali Yuga, it is not possible to do all that. And they also said that the only way we could try and get something like that is by doing prayers. And that's what I used to do till I was in my 10th standard, because they used to say that if you have God's grace, then maybe you would get some boons, and that's how you can proceed along that path. And that's what I attempted to do till I was in my 10th standard. And but in intermediate, Vishwa was my cousin. She was my cousin, and she introduced me to meditation. She also introduced me to metaphysical books. Till then, the books I read were all classics and itihasas and Puranas, and but nothing that showed that even in the present world, all of these were possible, and there were people who did something like that. In intermediate, I got introduced to Jonathan Livingston Seagull by Richard Bach, and also Ramta the White Book. And when I read these books, it was like a dream come true for me, because these were alive experiences of people who wrote about achieving something that is so surreal even in the present day. And the only way we could do that was through meditation, and it suddenly started making sense to me. Because if you look at all the sages, and if you take a look at any deity, any god, there's no one who hasn't meditated and yet achieved or reached that position. Each and every single one would meditate, let it be a deity or the sages that we talk about or the munis that we talk about, and it all made sense to me. And that's how I started along this meditation path. She also simultaneously trained me in small concepts or experiments that we could do as spiritual practitioners, like checking the aura or observing the colors and associating that with the chakra that gets activated on our body, and so on and so forth. This was in an intermediate. I was not encouraged to do anything other than pursue my studies till then, because my family was very particular that I only pursue my studies and not go into arts or anything else. But I loved music, and I also loved dance or anything that has got to do with ancient India. And it was in inter when I met Vishwa that I got introduced to dance and martial arts. And later on I joined mechanical engineering. And it was then that I started experimenting like all students would do. I read the book Secret by Rhonda Byrne, and I would experiment with how I would get my lab exams all through the 4 years, and how I would get my question paper and what questions would I get. And I also simultaneously started participating in everything that I couldn't do till then. And I used to win a lot of prizes. Simultaneously, I used to work in the FM. I was the prefect of our college and so on. By the end of and while I was studying, I also used to attend trekkings. I used to share all my experiences, anything that I've implemented, and anything that has a positive result. Most of them did, and I used to share all of them with my cousin Ishwaranaya, and I used to get practical advice as to how I could go about my life, how I could continue with my swadhyaya, how I could continue with my meditation practice. And I used to get Sajjana Sangatyam from both my cousins Ishwarani and Vishwa. And later on, after I graduated from mechanical engineering, I got placed in a campus placement, but I quit that soon and joined Amazon as an associate. That was just a temp role, but soon I proceeded from temp to permanent, and then I moved teams, and then I proceeded to logistics department. From there, I moved to a position of lead and then a manager. And during this time, while I worked for Amazon, I completed my MA in English. That's something that I always wanted to do because I had a lot of love towards literature. And I also simultaneously got trained further in martial arts. In Taekwondo, I got a black belt, first degree black belt. I also proceeded to do my national referee training. And I also got trained in Kuchipudi form of classical dance. And then I used to perform at various places like our Pyramid Valley, Bengaluru, or Kattal, Vikarabad, Life University, and so on and so forth. And while doing all these, I used to also attend trekkings, and I also completed Soul Coach training program in Life University Vikarabad, where I was exposed to the n number of types of wisdom that is available in spirituality, where they, as such, categorized the types of experiences we have into three different types, and then they introduced to different schools, us to different schools of wisdom. A teacher would come, an expert would come in that specific field, and they would make us meditate and also try out practicals there, right there in the session, and we would share our experiences. And then I also attended MBTP classes, which is the Maitreya Buddha training program in Bhagavad Gita classes. And Newton sir used to take these classes in Vikarabad Quantum Life University, Navya Takshasila Atma Vidya Peetam now. And we also used to take part in Shramadhanam to keep us grounded. Like this, I used to have multi I had exposure to all kinds of, wisdom or knowledge and guidance, and I'm very thankful for that. In last year, I decided that I had a great experience with working with Amazon. I've seen the corporate culture, I've experienced it, and that I wanted to take a different turn in my career, and I quit working for Amazon and I joined A.R. Rahman's Music Institute. It is called KM Conservatory. It is A.R. Rahman's Music Institute in Chennai. I quit working for Amazon and I joined there last year, and I'm pursuing my performance in arts degree from KM Music Institute. It is because of the pandemic that I am here back in Hyderabad now, and this is the introduction about me. And the today's going moving on to today's topic, it is I'd like to take us through a few case studies, and then I would take out examples that we all are well aware of people or music bands or anyone who has mastered their art. I would give you a few examples of those. I'd take you through those case studies, and then we can also go through some of the um, people who mastered their respective arts in India, and then I try and give you tips as to how we could implement that in our current lives. Let it be for our career or it could be our passion or anything. But that's how I'd like today's session to proceed. Okay. In order to master any art, what would one need? If we take studies as an example, what would one expect in order for him or her to excel in studies? The basic quotient that one would look at is the IQ level of that person. IQ is nothing but the intelligent quotient of a person. And this is very predominant in any country, in any continent for that matter. And this plays an important role. Anyone would simply comment that if someone is not doing good, then they would comment that maybe he's not good, maybe his IQ levels are low or something like that. But how important is IQ in order to excel? I'm not talking about normal being good at something. I'm talking about excelling at something. That how someone would take your name if they talk about that particular form of art or studies or subject or anything. When would that happen? uh, just like B.R. Ambedkar's sir's name would be taken when it comes to our constitution, because that is his baby. Like similarly, how would anyone take a particular person's name when it comes to certain art? If you need to gain mastery in anything to that certain level, then what would you need to do? Anyone would think that having IQ, a good intelligent quotient, is the most basic thing, right? Let us go through a study conducted by a professor at Stanford University. This was post World War One. This was back then in the 1950s. A person called Mr. Terman conducted. He wanted to, take a study. He wanted to define genius. He wanted to do case studies and produce results, do a lot of research, and then submit analysis on how anyone could be a genius. And for this, he designed a series of tests. These are called convergence tests. These are the basic logical analytical questions that we come across whenever we appear for any campus placements or anything like that for that matter. But these are convergence tests. What he did was he designed a series of these tests, and he went to almost he covered almost all the schools in that particular state or district. He used to go to each and every school. He used to talk to the teachers, and they used to single out best students of their class. Every teachers would know who are doing well or who are not doing well in their class, right? So they singled out a few students that are said to be the toppers or the best of the class, who had these amazing skills. And these students were given the tests. They were all at a certain age group. He didn't miss a single school. He made sure that he conducted these experiments on every school available. He also went and searched for the diamonds in the rough, people who are maybe not educated properly, maybe who are from a poor background, that their parents couldn't afford a proper education, but still who excel at something or the other. There was a small boy who was aged 9 years old. He didn't start studying. I mean, he didn't start his proper formal education, but he was excellent at playing piano. Whenever he started at uh, playing the instrument, then anyone would just forget everything and just delve into that bliss. But when he suspected that that boy would probably have a good IQ, and when he tested, it turned out that he had an IQ of 140. Just for those who are not particularly aware of what are the IQ levels that are considered the best, 70 is considered kind of poor. That a person with IQ level of around 70 is not so good, and an IQ level of 100 would mean that he's an average student or average at any work that he does. Anything above 120 would mean that that student is eligible or fit enough to get into college. And above 130, he's considered a genius, because Einstein was said to have an intelligent quotient of around 150. So what would we normally think? That if someone is as good at 130, then he must be then if Einstein had like 150 IQ, then someone who's near 200 or someone near 170 must be genius that we wouldn't come across, that we would probably think that he's one in a million, that he would achieve a lot. Maybe he'd invent things, and maybe he'd take the world to a different pace altogether. That's what we'd assume, right? And that's what Terman thought too. He thought he'd conduct these experiments, take the best of the best students who had the unsurpassable IQs, and then what he did was observe their lives. He didn't just take them to a special training program and just make sure that they learn a lot. Things do not work like that in the US. What he did was observe, let them get on with their life, because they had good education. They are continuing irrespective of the backgrounds, because he wanted, whenever a study like that is conducted, it's not taken unanimously, as in it doesn't involve only a certain age group, it doesn't involve only a certain background, or it doesn't involve uh, subjecting the students or the subjects to specific conditions, because he wanted to make sure that every kid, I mean, if all sort of kids including those with disabilities are in this sort of experiment, he let them get on with their normal lives. Then he was very particular, because it was as if like he was a mother hen picking at their children. He was that particular. He used to take continuous observations. He followed on through when they entered high school till they entered college, and how their careers proceeded. What we'd normally assume is that someone with IQ more than 140, 150, and so on would have their career molded into something that's extraordinary, right? But that is not what happened in because they were all subjects or students of Terman's experiment. They were all nicknamed termites. And when they started their career, it was observed that they out of they expected extraordinary results out of them, because they were the best of the best. But what happened was, maybe out of all those numbers, a couple of them, like less than 5% of them, were Nobel Prize laureates. Maybe someone would have assumed that they'd run politics, they'd run in politics, and they would invent things. And it doesn't have to be only academic. Maybe they would pursue an amazing career in music and so on. But it turned out that most of them were really good. They were good at their jobs, they were and earning a decent payroll and everything, but they didn't achieve the extraordinary that was expected of them. This made maybe because he was so sure that this is what the IQ is, the only thing that would define how a person would settle in his career, or IQ is the basic thing that would decide what a person becomes in his life. Sure, IQ is very, very important, but is it the only factor? When this experiment turned out a failure, that is when people started, I mean, psychologists and everyone started questioning. What they did was conduct a study on everyone who's the best and best of their field. And let us go through some case studies in this case. I'm not sure how many of you are computer programming enthusiasts, and how many of you would have Bill Gates as their role model. uh, all we know about Bill Gates is that he was a brilliant young math whiz, and he discovered computer programming at an early age. And he dropped out of Harvard, and he started Microsoft with a few of his friends. And because of his sheer brilliance and ambition and guts, he succeeded, and he turned into, he redesigned what computer programming was, and he turned out to be a giant in the software world. This is what we know about Bill Gates in general. But we also tend to make a jokes saying that Bill Gates was a Harvard dropout, so was Sachin Tendulkar. He was also a dropout, and so on. And we'd also joke about it, that dropouts are doesn't a dropout doesn't mean that he's always a failure. But what happened before that? What With what confidence did he quit Harvard, studying in Harvard University. Let us go through it. Bill Gates came from a family who was rich enough to afford sending him to a private school. Bill Gates was a genius, true, but he had a great IQ level, which many people tend to do. But what did he have in particular, in special, that made him turn out to be one of the topmost billionaires in the world? When he was a kid, when he was admitted in a normal school, he got bored because he could, understand everything, and he was already good at mathematics and so on. So Bill Gates parents sent him to a private school that only caters to the elite in Seattle. He was from Seattle. And there it turned out that the very school he was admitted to, this was back in 1960s, late 1960s, and it was about when computers were not available anywhere, because a computer occupied a size of a huge room, because they were only mainframe computers. And back then, in order to work on a computer, in order to write a program or start anything, there were two types of computers. In which we need to write in the program, and there were small cards like punch in cards. You would have to write a program, you would go to a computer, they would have a long list of candidates who already would have submitted their punch cards, and they would design a particular time for you, where you would have your punch card put in. And if it turned out that there was an error in the program we wrote, they would again call you back and give it back to you, and you would have to again go search for that error and again schedule an appointment to have your punch card inserted in the computer, and so on. This was very tedious. More than programming, it turned out as a test for patience, and you know rechecking whether you have made any mistakes or not. During that time, it was and there was another computer which directly connected to the mainframe, and then which would take into account the time slots, and it was all done electronically. These were the only types of computers, and having access to this mainframe computer, which with in which punch cards would be inserted, itself is such a rare thing, that having access to this better advanced version of electronic computer, where you wouldn't need to do all this manually, is something that would happen once in a green moon or blue moon. It's that rare. And it turned out that that private school in which Bill Gates got admitted to had an ASR 33 teletype model. This is a time sharing terminal. This was so very rare at that point of time. And what did Bill Gates get to do? He got to do real time programming on this ASR 33 teletype since he was in the 8th grade. And once this started, because students would experiment with computer, and this was all, time was money back, for in order to work on these computers. And so after they started putting in time, the school ran out of funds, and then the came forward to all the parents of all the students came forward to pay for it. And after those funds were exhausted, then what happened was, one of the students' parent used to work in a company called C Cubed. That was an upcoming computer company that used computer programming. And what the parent did was offer free computer programming time in exchange to them going through the softwares to see if there are any loopholes in it. And when that happened, again, Bill Gates utilized the time more than anything, because he got free access to working on a computer. And then he once and then he continued working on it, because they used up again a lot of time on the computer. The company soon went bankrupt, and then he didn't have he didn't have the opportunity to work on computer. Then there was a time frame when he was free, and then after that, in a 7 month period, he discovered that there was a university which is within a walking distance from his place, where he used to go visit that university and work on a computer in the early morning hours of, because that computer was only free from 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. So he discovered that, and he along with his friends would go to that place and practice programming there. And he used to do this on the nights, weekends. He skipped athletics class whenever he could spare the time. He used to go and do it because it became an obsession to him. And after that, during around this time, a person called Mr. Pembroke searched for programmers who had a lot of experience, but he was not, it was under one circumstance where he wouldn't pay much, but he would need experienced programmers, really experienced programmers. And where would he get them? Because it was just the beginning of the era of computers. So he got to know that there were a couple of students from this elite school who are really into computers and who would just grab a chance to work on computers. And so he thought maybe they had a lot of experience with programming. So he came and offered Bill Gates and one of his friends the opportunity to work on the programming or software. And these guys would have to take permission from their school. And when they, and it's not something that happens on a daily basis. It's not usual that the schools would agree for them to go miss out on their school year, work, go somewhere, work on something that is not even part of their regular academics. But the school said yes, and he was able to go work on that opportunity. So from 1968 through then, he got these amazing opportunities that are not usual, that were not usual for anyone, for any computer enthusiast back then at the time of 1960s. And by the time he dropped out of Harvard, he already consecutively worked on programming for 7 years. 7 years is, back then at that point of time where computers were so meager, was not a normal feat. He somehow or the other, he was presented with opportunities where he could find time to work on a computer. And then the rest is history. He along with three other founders, they founded Sun Microsystems and so on. And uh, when was Bill Gates born? It was in the 1950s. And when were the founders of the Sun Microsystems born? They were also born around 1953 to 1956. It was around these time, around it was around this time that if you could see people who succeeded really well in the Silicon Valley, or who succeeded really well in computer programming, if you notice, all of these guys of all of these people were born in a time frame of within 1953 to 556. So what was it that happened during this point of time that all of them ended up being such big shots in software? Is it astrology? No, it's not. It's a simple thing of how much time they got to invest due to some or the other. It's a sheer opportunity that got presented to them, and through which they were able to achieve it. The number of hours, according to psychologists, the number of hours it takes to achieve a required level of mastery that would make someone a world class expert is 10,000 hours of practice. Let it be anything. If you have 10,000 of hours of practice, that is enough to achieve a world class expertise in anything. In anything you would turn out to be the best. And there were again similar case studies on on people who did as well, as good as Bill Gates. It turned out that if you were born in 1940s, then you would be almost too old to, go about programming. If you were born again in 1960s or late 1950s, then it turns out that you're too young. And there were people who already achieved so much in programming. It turned out that because these people were born in the exact time frame of 1953 to 56, they were able to, just get uh, the Jews or the this the that the best out of everything, of the best of out of what they wanted to achieve in computer programming. And that is why they were able to put in 10,000 hours of time. Not only this was one example when it came to programming for, all the enthusiasts, computer programming enthusiasts, or so on. But then let us take an example of players, people who excelled in playing soccer or hockey in states like in continents or countries like the Canada or the US. It's when they observed, they found out that whoever was part of the major league, and how would these selections take place? People started training for hockey in Canada. They start training at the age of 4 or 5. They just grab a stick and they'll start practicing whether they know it or not. And by the time they were 9 to 11 years of old, they would enter minor league. The best of the best would enter minor league, and then they would be again selected. The best of the players would be selected from the minor league to enter the major league, and again from the major league they would again pick players who would eventually play in the Olympics. That's how important hockey is in Canada. And it turned out that the best of the best players, or about 80% of the players, would be born in the months of Jan, Feb, and March. It turned out they were all from Jan, Feb, and March. Sure, there were players who, who were born in November or August or so on too. But why is it that maximum percentile was occupied within these 3 months? It turned out that the cutoff date when uh, players would be selected to be part of the leagues was January 1st. So the person who would be born on the 2nd of January would have the highest advantage, because he would start training early, and this was around the age of 9 to 11 years. So if a person was born in November or December, that would put almost 10 to 11 month gap between the person born in Jan and the person born in the later year, the later part of the year. And 11 months of practice is a huge physical, huge difference, because at that point of time when they were, then the growth spurt is all exactly at that point of time. This many hours of practice, or 11 months or 10 months of practice, is a huge thing. That was why it turned out that later on when they studied, it turned out that people who and people who were born in Jan had better advantage compared to people even born in March or Feb and so on. And it turned out that whoever went forth to Olympics, who excelled, were all born within the first 3 months. This was how crucial each month or each day of practice was. And this rule applied for anything and everything. They took what they did was, they took a bunch of pianists or violinists and they conducted this study. There are players who are extremely good, that they proceed to be the soloists. They would proceed to be the best of the best, and they would proceed to give programs or concerts everywhere. They took students of such caliber, and they took students who are really good, really really amazing at playing violin or piano. And they took people who were okay, who were passable, who would maybe proceed to be music teachers in local schools or so on. They took all these categories. They divided violinists or pianists into these three different categories. One, they are people who are extremely good, who proceed to be soloists and give concerts, who are very very well, who did very well, and who are passable. And when they conducted studies, it turned out that the ones who would ultimately gain world class recognition for their work have had already spent at least 10,000, more than 10,000 hours playing at their instrument. They would start at an early age. They would maybe give 15 hours of practice when they were 8 or 9, and that would proceed to 20 hours or 24 hours. And by the time they turned 20 or 21, this would be the single minded thing that they had. This resulted in 10,000 hours of practice for those guys, which is why they were they became so good at playing that instrument. And we all know the music band Beatles. It was very very famous a music band for those who listen to a lot of Western music. John Lennon, Paul McCartney, George Harrison, and Ringo Starr. These are the four members in the musical band. They were considered the words fail. They were considered to be an era itself in classic in music back then. I mean, it's not classical music. They did pop, rock, and then a bit of jazz and everything. How did they proceed to be the best of best? It turned out that they came to the US in around 1960s, I guess. Yeah, they came to US in around 1960s again, 19th February 1964. Yeah, and then by then they came to US, and once they started performing, they took everyone by a storm. Everyone was so enthralled by the music, and it was such a craze. Beatles was such a craze. And how did they become so good? They were just a mere high school band who graduated, who were just done with high school, right? But how did they do so well? That was because when they were in their high school, they were offered an opportunity to perform in Hamburg, Germany. And how did they perform, and for how many days did they perform? The first trip that they visited Germany, they performed for 106 nights continuously, and they would perform 7 days a week, 106 nights, and 6 hours each night continuously. In the second trip, they had to perform for 92 nights, and for the third trip, they had to perform for 48 nights. This was altogether 172 nights together, and they had to perform continuously for 6 to 9 hours. And in about a period of 1 year and a half, they had to perform continuously for 270 nights. This was almost 1200 times of band practice, and this was only performing live. Imagine how much practice they had to put in order to perform live. And because they had to play continuously and keep the audience engaged, they had to develop a lot of stamina. For that, they had to develop a lot of tricks. They had to learn a lot of cover versions. They had to experiment with rock and roll and a little bit of jazz and everything. By the time, I mean, 1200 hours of practice for musical bands is like most bands won't even practice in their lifetime for 1200 hours. And by the time they were in high school, they already had that much of practice. And when did their first album though gain recognition? It was, there were many songs, famous songs, A Day in a Life, Hey Jude, and so on. But the best of the best albums didn't again release immediately after they got these hours of practice. It was a few years later. And by the time they had already completed 10,000 hours of practice, it was very clear. And that was why they are phenomenal. They are in an era by themselves. These are all examples that happen in the Western, say, world. But let us take examples of who we know personally, maybe in India. Let us consider Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam. When how he is considered the missile man of India, right? And when was how did he come about it? He was born in 1931 in Tamil Nadu, and by the year 1954 he completed his graduation in physics, and he joined Madras Institute of Technology in the year 1955. And then he completed his aerospace engineering. He proceeded to work in DRDO and ISRO and so on. And but when did he anyone who might have read The Wings of Fire by APJ Abdul Kalam would realize that his success came, I mean, the thing he succeeded with was SLV-3, which proceeded to as Rohini. When was this launched? This was launched in the year 1980. Similarly, the Polar satellite launch vehicle that he worked on, it it became a success within the years 1970 to 1990. This again shows us that because he started learning aerospace engineering when he had got admitted into Madras Institute of Technology. This was again back in 1955. And anyone who would have read his book would know that he put in extra long hours. There were no weekends for him, there were no holidays for him, there were no vacations for him. He would just go about work, sometimes stay for days altogether at his work center, and they would he would only come back to maybe eat and sleep, and then he would again go back. So many hours of practice. And then his success came again in later on in the 1980s, and between 1970 to 1999. By that time, he must have easily put on 10,000 hours of practice. And we all know how well recognized he is for his work in aerospace engineering, for launching Agni or Prithvi and Pokhran 2 experiments and so on. Similarly, a person we all know and whose music we all enjoy a lot, A.R. Rahman. He was born again in 1967, and his first and this guy, he got the first film he directed music for, got the national award. If we see the examples we took till now, uh, they started working in their particular art at one point of time, and it was only after 10,000 and so on hours of practice. Take Beatles, for example. Their success didn't come in the first album they released, it was later on, almost close to a number of years, that the album they got released gained such worldwide recognition. But here in case of Rahman, for the first movie that he gave music for, Roja, in 1992, it got the national award that we all know about. Then he how was it that the first film he gave music for gained such great audience and applause? It was because, since he was a kid, he used to accompany his father, and he used to arrange and play keyboard for him. At the age of 9, his father expired, and then he had to simultaneously work and study. Because he had to take care of his family, he started working. This was at the age of 9. By then, he must have gained considerable expertise in arranging or playing keyboard, that at the age of 9 he was able to feed his family just by working along with studying. But at the age of 9, imagine a 9-year-old kid who would have to feed his family. How good must his work be in order for him to continue to gain income from that? And he used to arrange various instruments, synthesizers, and so on. Not only keyboard, he used to work on drums and synthesizers. And this was the time when his childhood friends, and he formed a musical band. So it was almost since the age of 5 or 6 that A.R. Rahman started working on, in when he was exposed to this music industry. And then he worked with such great musicians like Ilayaraja, M.S. Viswanath, and Master Dhanraj, and he got formally trained in music from the age of 11. So this resulted, and he started composing jingles when he was very little. If you all know, for Titan or Allwyn, he used to give jingles and produce music for them. And then at the age of 25 years, in the year 1992, it was when he got the opportunity to work on his first film, and he got a national award for that. So that means when he started out at the age of 9, he started working for his family, but he must have been exposed to music from a very tender age, say 5 or 6 years old. And when did he get to do his first film? When he was 25 years old. He had almost 18 to 20 years of practice. And by the time, because he was lacking in studies, because his concentration was on music, he had to quit school. So imagine, close to 18, minimum of 18 years of practice. And then that was national level recognition. When did he get his Oscar? In 2008 for the Slumdog Millionaire. And by then it is again 25 plus 35 plus 41 years. So we know that Rahman started at a young age, but imagine the number of hours of practice that he must have got. So the that those are a few examples of how people who excelled at. And even if you take Wolfgang Mozart, he was said to be a genius, musical genius. He was a prodigy, and he was said to started composing at the age of 6. But when did his music properly I mean, when was his first piece? When did he gain recognition? The first piece that he gained recognition was for the piece he wrote when he was aged 21. Till then, whatever music he used to produce, his father or his teachers used to make corrections and so on. We all know that he's a prodigy, but he started at an early age of 6 years. He almost has these many years of practice. And thus, by looking at all these examples, we know that whoever have excelled in the respective art or programming or anything for that matter, they not only had a good IQ. Good IQ is important, but it is not enough to decide how they would proceed, how well they'd excel in that in their respective field. Because if you observe the top 25 Nobel laureates, let it be in chemistry, medicine, any field for that matter, if you observe where they've graduated from, you would spot maybe couple, two or three members graduating from MIT, Massachusetts Institute, or so on. The rest of them would have studied in normal colleges. They are not the Ivy League colleges. They are normal colleges that we would probably attend here in our surroundings. Not everyone of us would have graduated from IIT or uh, CBIT or so on, right? We would have studied in good colleges, but how did they go about and proceed to be Nobel laureates? It was because of the number of hours they put in later on. Thus, I would say, I when I first came across this concept, I wondered, I realized that maybe this was why Samayame Sadhana was one of the important, sutras in our pyramid spiritual society. It is one of these important sutras, Samayame Sadhana, and there's such heavy, such huge research behind it. if you if you are able to put in 10,000 hours into anything, then you would gain world class, you would become a world class expert in that respective field. But how, say, people, all of us who got to know about this, maybe we are not trained from our early age. Maybe we discovered our passion later on as to what you are interested in. So how would we start putting in 10,000 hours of practice right now, right? Because we already might have started on something, but how could we put in 10,000 hours of practice now? It would take years and years of time, is what many of you might wonder. There's also a tip for this. uh, Say our brain is equipped in such a way that we do not have to actually work on something. So what happens when we practice? What's the scientific reason behind 10,000 hours of practice making someone a world class expert? Brain has two types of matter. One is gray matter and one is white matter. While the gray matter processes information and direct signals and sensory stimuli, the gray matter is a combination of nerve fibers and fatty tissue. And these nerve fibers have axons. These axons are, they what they do is they carry the electric impulses away from the main body of the neuron. And they also have an insulation tissue, which is myelin. When you repeatedly practice something, this myelin content surrounding the axons would increase. It's like when you keep on practicing something, it's as if uh, because when you practice something, when you learn a new thing, the neurons connect with each other in a certain way, and they form a particular that is why they say that once you learn something, your brain is not the same. It might have altered by then, and it's not it's plasticity of the brain. That's how brain works. The neurons connect with each other, and they tend to form a certain pathway. And when you repeat something, those pathways, say there's a huge forest somewhere, where you start going there, there's no path down there. You go there, and you're the first to trod upon it. There's no pathway formed. Imagine hundreds of people following you, or hundreds of people who might have who would then go about that path. Gradually the plants or the small shrubs would get trodden upon, and gradually a path would form on its own. Though it did not exist prior to that, a path would form. Similarly, and then similarly what would happen is that in our brains, when the neurons connect in a single way, and when you practice and repeat and repeat and repeat, it's almost like a highway is formed. And from then on, whenever you need something, whenever you do something, it's not just muscle memory, it's also the memory that is formed here. And it would, things would, the electric impulses would happen in a fraction of a second that the brain would not even realize that something like that has happened. Neural networks like that would get developed. And that was why repetition is very important and practice is very important. But how to put in 10,000 hours of practice now? It's quite simple. It's all you need to do is, if you do not need to necessarily work on it. What scientists and again studies have shown that when you imagine, or when you practice something mentally, say you are a pianist or a violinist, you do not have to have a piano in front of you where you would have to press on the keys and practice a symphony or something. All you need to do is imagine that you are practicing it. Similarly, if you are preparing for a song, or if you are preparing for programming, you do not have to literally sit in front of a computer and write down the program by yourself. All you need to do is imagine that they imagine writing a program, or imagine if you're presented with a problem, how would you would write a solution for that in the terms of programming. This doesn't necessarily require a software installed and a computer in front of you, because there are times when you do not or you when you are not always in front of a system. Maybe you might be traveling, or you might be just simply daydreaming. We have 24 hours in a day. You do not have to physically and necessarily do it like that. All you need to do is simply make sure that when you would actually do it, go through the similar sensations. That would mean thinking in exact same way as you would do when you are actually working on it. This would again generate exactly the same response that between your nerve cells. They would be again dubbed into thinking that you are actually practicing it, because you're thinking enough to work on it, right? And you're thinking enough, and you would have to go through a similar thought process, which would result in these neurons again forming a network, and the development of myelin and the active impulses corresponding with one another. And that would give you mental practice. This would again add up to the 10,000 hours of practice. And this doesn't again mean that you would have to put in these hours of practice only in things that we are passionate about, that would lead us, to a successful career. We have Samayame Sadhana in our introduced to us through, I think, as one of our sutras in PSSM, right? Uh, Imagine, and again, when we sit down to meditate, some of us get experiences immediately. Some of us would have the third eye visions, or the sensations and the vibrations in our body. We could almost immediately feel it. While there are some who would practice on and on and on for hours and hours all together, and they would still you know they still are, they would not still have those exact same experiences like there's people who would have just started and have gotten. That was, I think this is a concept that is unique. This is an anomaly when it comes to meditation, because um, they say that the sadhana that we might have done in our past lives would have resulted in the experiences, or the ease of the experiences that we would get in the current lifetime. They would say that maybe in your previous lifetimes you must have been a sadhu, or you must have done extensive practice, because of which you are able to get experiences now, even though you did not put as many hours of effect. I think this is an anomaly in our case, because that does happen, and we might have seen a number of people doing that all around us, who might have been getting experiences like that all around of us. Uh, Take Patri sir, for example. We all know that when he was introduced to meditation in the beginning, he studied lots and lots of books of Theosophical Society, right? He said he must have easily read 10,000 books alone only on chakras and seven bodies and so on. Imagine someone reading 10,000 books on a subject. How many hours, or how many books, or how much subject must he have been exposed to? He would have easily put in 10,000 hours of reading in spiritual subjects, right? Similarly, I have my cousin that I told about, Ishwaranaya. He has started teaching martial arts or teaching meditation from the very day he started practicing it, or the very day he learned it. And imagine how many hours of teaching. It must have easily exceeded 10,000 hours. Maybe that was why he's so good at explaining. And he's a 6 dan black belt holder, by the way. And he's considered an expert, because all over in he is also the best national referee. And um, people whoever would have attended his classes would admit that he explains everything, he elucidates everything and explains in such manner that anyone or everyone could understand it. Maybe he might have had 10,000 hours of practice on teaching easily. And these are the real life examples that I have seen, uh, not only of tragedies that we've discussed till now. And in coming to my uh, what I've noticed in, through self experience, when I worked for Amazon, I moved teams, and eventually I ended up in a logistics team where I was taught reactive scheduling. Reactive scheduling is a process that is, I couldn't go in deep explaining what the process is, but it required, ours was the only team that supported that particular function. And the only other team that actually did what we did was in US. All over the world, Hyderabad, there's a team in Hyderabad and a team in US. We are the only two teams who used to work on that project. And I was introduced to the project when within the 3 months of its initiation. And then I started working on it. And I put in those extra hours. I used to work overtime. And by the end of 1.5 year or so, I started training managers, or whoever. Managers would keep on changing in the office. And once a manager would leave the job, another would come in, but he wouldn't have had any experience with that particular project. I used to train managers, and I used to take on new sessions, new employees, and anyone who would come on. I would used to train them on reactive scheduling. I was, back then when I worked for Amazon, I was considered the expert in that particular subject. Now after I came to know about this topic, it was then that I realized that it was because of the extra amount of practice that I had with that particular project. Not only that, I was there within the first, right from the first 3 months of the initiation of the project. And then I continued, and I used to work overtime, and I went on to other projects. I was almost a stickler for it. And I was the only one who continued to work on it, which made me an expert in that particular field. And because of which I was again promoted to a lead and manager. That was one of the crucial projects for me. So that was how I could relate, with how I didn't put in 10,000 hours, maybe like close to 3,000 or 4,000 hours maybe. But that made me good at it in the teams, because there were no one else who were able to put in those many hours of time for that project. This was again one example of how I could relate to this concept. I think this was how I would like to end it. I hope you all gained something out of it. And if you any of you have any questions, I'd like to answer them.
Thank you, Neela. You have given a very detailed explanation and also taken great examples like Bill Gates and A.R. Rahman. So, all including software field and career as well as music and art platform. So, we really understood the importance. So, we have Navya here who has raised a hand. So,
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, Neela, ma'am. So that
Hi.
was a very unique and great session. So my question is, how to overcome depressions or breakdowns or fear in the path of our success, or in the path of our uh, what do you want to achieve our goal. So how to overcome those depressions, breakdowns, and fears?
Sure. Hi, Navya. Uh, so, if you are you asking me, if you have a certain goal, if you have a passion towards something, and you would want to proceed towards it, but You would feel depressed in order to continue along that path. Is that what the question is about?
Yeah, to continue along that path, or
Okay.
yeah. Yes.
uh, if you're feeling depressed, though you are clear about your goal, if you are feeling depressed when you are proceeding along that goal, it must be because of something that is pulling you down. Is it because of lack of support from your parents when you want to continue on that path, or it could also be because of lack of opportunities? Though your parents are there to support you, it is a highly competitive field, and maybe you are unable to make your mark in that field. That might be one of the reasons. Or if there is any other reason that you could come upon, then let me know and I could
No, not particular reason. So
no.
any kind of reasons the youngsters may be facing.
Okay, sure. So, what you need to again make sure is how passionately, how desperately you'd want to pursue it. That is the first thing. And there pitfalls come for everyone. Pitfalls are common. The reason why we grow out of how we blossom, how we grow into something that is extraordinary is because we would have pitfalls. Because pitfalls do not come to us, or else all these pullbacks would not come to us if we are not capable of achieving or not capable of overcoming them. They are
Yes.
there for a reason. They are there so that we would overcome them and learn from it. If something of a similar nature would repeatedly come to us on that path, it means that you overcame it one time, a second time, third time. But if it's repeatedly coming, it still means that you have something to learn out of it. There must be a takeaway from it which you are failing to see, because of which it's coming in repetitively as a pattern. When you observe what it is, and when you learn from it, you in fact need to express your gratitude that it has come to you in that way to teach you. And when you do that, and that is how you when you completely learn everything that it has to offer, that is when you would overcome it. And these pitfalls might seem as something that at that point of time it would seem so huge that that is something that that you can never ever cross. You will feel disheartened. You would think that this is it, this has come and now there's no way out of it. You might feel all these, but again you need to realize that this isn't the first time that you have come across a pitfall. All through your lifetime, did things always go your way? Did everything happen according to your wish? Did everything happen for everyone according to their wish? Take anyone who has again mastered anything. Take anyone who's in the top position. Let it be anyone like player or musician or anyone who's good at anything. Take our Krishna or Rama or avatars. Take anyone for that matter. You could never you could never even consider someone who hasn't reached their position with no pitfalls. You can you I would challenge you to in fact find someone who reached achieved a certain position without facing any drawbacks or setbacks. There's no one like that. In fact, they might have turned into a diamond. They might have in fact uh, grown into someone to into a far more exalted position because they've went through those pitfalls or setbacks.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
whenever, and besides that, at that point of time it might seem so huge to you. We all might have uh, done something, might have maybe in the class, in one or the other class, some we might have gotten low marks at one point of time. At that point of time, looking at that mark sheet or looking at that incident, it would seem like, oh no, wait, what would I do? It might have been very embarrassing for us. But after a few months or so, if you look back at that same incident, it would again seem so trivial. It's like, is this what I wondered about? Is this what I felt so depressed about? After a few months, time heals everything. It
Yes.
might seem at that point of time that it is unsurpassable, but all you need to do is look back, look into your life. You might have already received a solution for it, or the solution might be staring right at your face.
Yeah.
And it, all that power or all that knowledge or all that wisdom to overcome that is within you. It's right with you.
Yeah.
Meditate, read, or
Yeah.
believe that you will get a solution, and then look about your world and you will get the solution in one or the other form. It might
Yes.
be anything. It can be a small kid teaching you that, or it could be anyone would anything could happen, you would get that solution. But if you're still so feeling down that that you find no way out, then I'd suggest reach out to anyone, reach out to uh, or any of your friends or people who could offer a solution, or anyone from our batch for that matter. We are all here for you, and we could all, any one of us could offer you anything that good regarding that.
Thank you so much for your wonderful answer. So, what we need to do is we have to have a better understanding of our journey, and to do so, we need to do meditation, practice meditation every day,
Sure.
and learn our lessons and proceed. Yeah.
Yes, yes,
Yes.
that's right.
Thank you for your answer, and thank you for it's a nice session. It was very unique session,
Thank
and thank you.
And I'd like to thank you all, and Pyramid Call Services, for giving me this opportunity to share whatever I've uh, read with all of you. Thank you.
Neela, I have one question.
Sure, sir.
So, like, what made you quit the job? Uh,
Okay.
how did you get that? Because many youngsters or many people have had so many passion, but since they'll be in a confusion, like, how can I quit the job and do that, or follow my passion? Even if they don't like the job, they'll be doing a job, but they have some other passion. So,
Yes.
what made you quit the job and go in that path?
Okay, thank you for this question. Since I was a little kid, A.R. Rahman's music would keep me going. If I had to wake up, I used to wake up to his music, and I used to end the day with his music. If I had to eat or do anything, his music had to be played in the background. That was how obsessed I was with him, with his work. And then later on, I really like singing and music, and I joined Carnatic music when I joined Amazon. I also simultaneously learned Carnatic music under Nihal sir. He's a playback singer and a music director in Telugu industry. And while I was singing, I could feel that it is something that brought joy, and I could sense that. And whenever I used to attend the classes, music classes, I could clearly sense that joy and that bliss and that feeling that this is what I am here for. This doesn't have to be a single thing, this could be anything. Along with music, I have other passions as well that I am pursuing. Some things that you do make you feel the joy from within. It makes you feel that yes, this is what I am here for, this is what it is all about. You might be doing something else, but it would eventually draw you back to that. No matter what you do career wise, it would always draw you back to that point again, which is your passion, whichever is your passion. You would need to decide whether you have any responsibilities as to whether you would have a family depending on you, or whether you will have a certain things. It's not, I didn't quit Amazon again right away, it's after a few years. By that point of time, I'd done things that I always wanted to do, like do a lot of shopping, attend a lot of trekkings, and go on lots of vacations, and go on lots of team outings, explore everything around. I did everything that I wanted to do. And then uh, at that point of time, I realized that this was amazing because I enjoyed a lot at Amazon. It's this was that corporate experience was so good because it was one of the best companies anyone could work for. They take care of their employees so well. But at the same time, I had this urge to learn music, to maybe sing, because I know that growing up, his the music that I listened to was my what do you call that, was my holding point. It was there because I survived, or it changed me as a person, it changed me as an individual, and I knew that I wouldn't be the same without it. And I also I found solace in music, I found peace in music. And I, if possible, I what I wanted to do was again bring that solace to people through me, if I could, by being a singer. And that's that deep thought and that deep feel for it made me quit Amazon. By the time it was again on practical terms, I had to convince my family, because my family is here in Hyderabad, and I had to go to a town. They don't speak our language. You know how Tamil Nadu is, and the weather is different, and I had to pay for my school fees. So it was not entire, it's not impractical, because I know that whenever I know that I have a confidence in me that no matter what, it doesn't have to be music. I could earn, if it comes to that, I could earn somehow the other, because I could teach music, or I could teach English, or I could easily learn, and I could maybe work part time. I know that I could financially sustain myself, and in order to not to depend on others. But I knew, I had that confidence that I could sustain myself. And I also knew that it is not for waste. I knew that I could put in the hours of practice. I knew all that I had to do was, make sure that I keep visualizing, make sure that I keep working on it, because we are creators. It's not like we are not stuck in a Newtonian model of how things work. We know quantum physics. We know that any atom or any cell could behave in any way that we want it to behave as. We, with all, someone who's devoid of all this knowledge might wonder about taking that step. But we are all creators. We all practice meditation. We visualize. We can attract anything we want into our life. So as long as you're sure, as long as you can, maintain it in all ways, make sure that you're covered in all ways. It doesn't have to be all that too. You can still have that deep belief in you and just go about it. Even that is possible, because I had all this backing. And I also consulted my cousins, and they were like, I think you should take this call, because we shouldn't stop. When you know deep in your heart, when you know deep in your bones that you have something to do, but that is not what you're after, and that would leave a regret in your life, that maybe back when, if I had attempted it, then I might have been in different era. You should definitely try that out. You shouldn't miss it out for any. You could, it doesn't necessarily mean that you would have quit your that you should quit your job. You could simultaneously manage it, like I did when I worked for Amazon. But later on, if you think, yes, this is for sure what I would want to do, or maybe even if you're not sure, you'd want to experiment with multiple things. Like, music is not the only thing that I'm learning in Chennai. I also was learning Bharatanatyam. So, you might have multiple passions. You would have just, you just have to adjust the time enough to pursue all of it. And when you feel for certain that you're covered in every way possible, all you need to do is take the courage, discuss with your family, convince them, and go about it. You're free to do what you like.
Great, Neela, that you have taken that step, and you have been inspiring others also, because many have noticed, many people, including myself, sometimes I feel that, like, to take that step. So taking that step at right time is also very important, as you said, looking at circumstances and everything. So thank you so much for your inspiring session, and the importance that you said about time and mastery. So as you said, let us all remember ourselves that the main point was 10,000 hours of practice will be great masters in whatever we do.
Yes.
So thank you so much. And I would like to once again invite you, if you have any other topics, please do come and share your wisdom.
Sure, sir, sure. I
Thank you
will.
so much.
Thank you so much.
So thank you, friends, for joining today. And every Sunday we'll be having sessions from great masters. So please do join every Sunday. and let us all listen to wisdom and transform our lives through practice of meditation and ahimsa. Thank you.